Your ideas are interesting, May. The resource optimization plan shows considerable thought. He paused, tapping his pen against the glass tabletop. However, after careful consideration, we've decided to go in a different direction. My heart dropped, even though I'd anticipated these exact words. I see, I replied, gathering my presentation materials while the silence grew oppressive. Look, you're brilliant. No one disputes that, Declan continued, his tone shifting to something falsely sympathetic. But this is the 9th project proposal where we've reached the same conclusion. You simply don't fit our culture here. He didn't even bother lowering his voice. The statement hung between us, as several executives nodded in agreement. Through the glass walls, I noticed staff members pretending not to watch. The culture, I repeated flatly. Yes, we value team players who understand our established approaches. Declan leaned back, already dismissing me. Someone will take over your work immediately. We appreciate your contributions, but perhaps your vision would align better elsewhere. As I gathered my materials, Phoebe from marketing whispered to Terrence, loud enough for me to hear, another May special. All brilliance, zero practicality. Someone snickered. I tucked my tablet under my arm, taking one last look at the presentation I'd spent weekends perfecting. Thank you for the opportunity, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the burning knot in my throat. Walking through the office felt like moving through molasses, each step heavy with the weight of yet another rejection. Behind me, through the still open door, I heard Griffin's voice. Now that's settled. Who's joining for drinks at Ivy's tonight? Laughter erupted as the door swung shut. In the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection. This wasn't just about a project. This was systematic. 3 years, 9 different projects, 9 rejections with the identical excuse. My phone buzzed with a message from my only ally, Lena. How bad? I typed back, same story, different day. The elevator doors opened to reveal Declan's executive assistant, Kennedy. Her eyes widened slightly before she composed herself. Oh, May, I heard what happened. Such a shame. Is it? I asked, stepping inside. Kennedy shifted uncomfortably. Between us, your proposal was brilliant, but you know how things work here. I did, all too well. When the doors opened at the lobby, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of walking out, I pressed the button for the 5th floor, records and analytics. If you've ever been dismissed, overlooked, or told you didn't belong, you know the feeling crawling through my chest right then. If this story resonates with you so far, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Trust me, what happens next is something you won't want to miss. My name is May Tanaka, 32 years old, systems analyst with specializations in organizational efficiency and project management. I graduated top of my class, speak 4 languages, and have an uncanny ability to identify inefficiencies that others miss. I'm also, apparently, a walking cultural misfit, according to the leadership at Palmer Innovations. My first removal came 3 years ago. I developed a resource allocation system that would have eliminated redundancies, specifically, certain executives' vanity projects that drained company resources. The division head, Griffin, had smiled while explaining I didn't understand the nuances of company culture. The second time was when I suggested promoting talented internal staff instead of hiring expensive outsiders with connections to senior leadership. Terrence had personally shown me the door, explaining that culture fit was as important as competence. By the 6th rejection, I recognized the pattern clearly. Whenever my work threatened their comfortable ecosystem, their lunches, their bonuses, their buddies in middle management, I became culturally incompatible. What broke me wasn't the 7th rejection. It was what I discovered afterward. While clearing my temporary desk, I noticed discrepancies in quarterly performance metrics that others had missed. Year-over-year decline hidden behind creative accounting. Mounting complaints from key clients buried in sanitized reports. The same executives pushing me aside were destroying what had once been an industry leader. That night, I changed my approach. I began quiet conversations with mid-level managers who shared my concerns. Dinners after work, coffee meetings before the day started. We exchanged observations about troubling trends while I cultivated relationships throughout the organization, staying valuable enough to remain employed but never prominent enough to trigger another dismissal. During my 8th rejection, Kennedy had pulled me aside afterward. "They're afraid of you," she whispered. "Your ideas expose their inadequacies." Now, after this ninth rejection, I stood in the fifth floor records department, facing Tomas, the aging data manager who remembered when the company's founder was still alive. May? What brings you here? He adjusted his glasses, peering at me over ancient computer monitors. I need access to the integrated performance analytics for the last 5 years, I said quietly. The raw data, not the executive summaries. Tomas hesitated. That's restricted information. I know, but I also know you've watched what's happening here longer than anyone. His eyes narrowed slightly. Why do you need it? I took a breath. Because someone needs to show the board what's really happening before it's too late. Tomas studied me for a long moment before turning to his keyboard. I never gave you this, he murmured, typing rapidly. And if anyone asks, you hacked my system. My tablet pinged with an incoming file transfer. Thank you, I said. He didn't look up. Don't thank me yet. What you're about to do will make you enemies. I already have those, I replied. That weekend, as I pored over the data in my apartment, patterns emerged that confirmed my worst suspicions. Client retention down 47%, innovation metrics falling, employee turnover at record highs in every department except executive leadership. My phone rang, startling me from my analysis. Unknown number. Hello? I answered cautiously. Miss Tanaka? An older woman's voice, refined but direct. My name is Eleanor. I believe we need to talk about Palmer Innovations. Who is this? I asked. Someone who shares your concerns. I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Are you available for brunch tomorrow? Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet at an upscale restaurant downtown. I arrived early, scanning the room until I spotted an elegant, silver-haired woman sitting alone by the window. Miss Tanaka, she greeted me, extending her hand. Thank you for coming. How do you know who I am? I asked as I sat down. Eleanor smiled. Because I make it my business to know when someone is trying to save my husband's legacy. My confusion must have shown on my face. My husband founded Palmer Innovations 35 years ago, she clarified. While I'm no longer involved in daily operations, I retain significant voting shares and board influence, and I've been watching you for some time. The waiter arrived with coffee. When he left, Eleanor leaned forward. 9 project removals in 3 years, all with the same excuse about culture, she said. Tell me, Miss Tanaka, what do you think is really happening at Palmer? I hesitated only briefly before pulling out my tablet. I think the current leadership is systematically dismantling everything your husband built, and I can prove it. Eleanor's eyes sparked with interest. Then perhaps it's time we discussed the future, both yours and Palmer's. As I began sharing my findings, neither of us realized we were being watched from across the restaurant by Kennedy, whose loyalty to Declan was about to be tested in ways none of us anticipated. For 2 hours, Eleanor and I dissected the data. Her sharp questions revealed a mind still razor-focused on business, despite her removed position. This quarterly decline pattern began exactly when the current executive team took control, she noted, tracing the downward trend with a manicured fingernail. The board sees sanitized versions of these reports. They're burying the warning signs, I confirmed. As we finished our meeting, Eleanor fixed me with a penetrating gaze. You've risked your position by gathering this information. Why? I considered my answer carefully. Because the company deserves better than leaders who reject innovation to protect their comfort. Her lips curved slightly. My husband would have appreciated that answer. She stood, collecting her purse. Continue your work, Miss Tanaka. I'll be in touch. 3 days later, I was summoned to Declan's office. Kennedy avoided my eyes as I passed her desk. Close the door, Declan ordered when I entered. His typically smooth demeanor had hardened. I understand you had a meeting with Eleanor Palmer on Sunday. My pulse quickened. That's my personal time. Not when you're discussing company business. He leaned forward. Kennedy saw you showing company data to an outsider. Mrs. Palmer is hardly an outsider, I countered. She has no operational role here. His voice lowered dangerously. Where did you get restricted analytics data? I maintained eye contact. I analyzed publicly available information. Don't insult my intelligence. Declan stood, circling his desk. You're suspended pending investigation into data theft. Security will escort you out. My stomach dropped. On what grounds? You've proven my point about culture fit, May. You're not a team player. As security walked me through the office, I noticed Lena watching with wide eyes. Griffin and Terrence huddled by the coffee machine, smirking. At home, I paced my apartment, calculations running through my mind. I'd expected pushback, but not this quickly. Kennedy had reported our meeting immediately. My phone lit up with a text from Lena. "They're searching your workspace. What's happening?" Before I could respond, another message arrived from an unknown number. "Stand firm. E. Eleanor." 2 tense days passed. On the third morning, my phone rang at 6:15 a.m. "Miss Tanaka, this is Victor Nolan, board chairman at Palmer." His deep voice sounded grave. "Your presence is requested at an emergency board meeting this morning, 9 o'clock sharp. I'm currently suspended," I reminded him. "I'm aware. This supersedes that action. The matter is urgent." When I arrived, security escorted me not to the boardroom, but to a small conference room where Eleanor waited with 3 board members I recognized from company photos. "Thank you for coming," Victor said, gesturing toward an empty chair. Eleanor spoke first. "I've called this emergency session to address serious concerns about company direction." She nodded toward me. "Miss, Tanaka has helped compile troubling evidence that current leadership is endangering Palmer's future." For the next hour, I presented my findings to increasingly disturbed board members. Victor's face darkened as I detailed the pattern of rejected innovations that could have reversed declining performance. "Why didn't operations flag these trends?" asked Olivia, the compliance director. "Because operations reports directly to the people concealing the problems," I explained. When I finished, the room fell silent until Victor cleared his throat. "Miss Tanaka, would you step outside while we discuss?" I waited in the hallway, watching employees arrive for the workday, unaware of the earthquake happening in the small conference room. 20 minutes later, Victor opened the door. "We've reached a decision," he said gravely. "Please come with me." He led me to the executive floor and into the CEO's empty office. "Where's Roland?" I asked, referring to the current chief executive. "Board members are speaking with him now," Victor replied, straightening a picture frame on the wall. The situation required immediate action. My confusion must have shown. "Miss Tanaka, the board has unanimously voted to appoint new leadership," he continued. "Someone who understands both our challenges and our potential." I stared at him blankly until his meaning registered. "You can't mean..." "Effective immediately, you are appointed Chief Executive Officer of Palmer Innovations." Victor handed me a folder. "These documents outline the board's decision and your authority." Eleanor was particularly insistent. My mind raced. "The current executive team will report to you now," he finished. "They're being notified as we speak." Through the glass walls, I saw Declan storming down the hallway toward us, face contorted with rage. Behind him trailed Phoebe, Griffin, and the others who had systematically removed me from their projects. "What is the meaning of this?" Declan demanded as he burst into the office. "Victor, you can't be serious. She's under investigation." "An investigation you manufactured," Victor replied calmly. "The board has reviewed Miss Tanaka's evidence and found your leadership wanting." "This is absurd," Phoebe interjected. "She has no executive experience." "Yet she identified problems you either missed or concealed," Victor countered. I stood quietly, watching the realization dawn across their faces as one by one they understood what was happening. Terrence recovered first. "So she charmed the founder's widow. That doesn't qualify her to lead this company." "No," I finally spoke. "My qualifications are 9 rejected projects that would have reversed our decline, and the vision to see what you've been hiding." The tension in the room was electric. Griffin looked ready to explode while Phoebe seemed on the verge of tears. Declan simply stared at me with cold hatred. "The board meeting continues at 11, Victor announced. "Miss Tanaka will address the full executive team then." After they left, I sank into the CEO's chair, trembling slightly from adrenaline. "Breathe," Victor advised. "The hard part begins now." He was right. Within hours, I faced a room full of hostile executives who had spent years dismissing me. Standing at the head of the boardroom table, I felt their resentment like a physical force. "I understand this transition is unexpected," I began. "Unexpected?" Declan interrupted. "It's unprecedented and inappropriate." I met his gaze steadily, as was suspending an employee for speaking with a board member. Before he could respond, I distributed folders to everyone present. These contain restructuring plans for each division. You have 2 options: commit to our renewed values of innovation and accountability, or accept the departure terms on page 4. The room erupted in protests until I raised my hand. "You've made it abundantly clear that I don't fit your culture," I continued once they quieted. "Now you must decide if you can adapt to mine." Griffin slammed his folder shut. "This is nothing but revenge." No, I corrected him. This is recovery of Palmer's founding principles and market position. I outlined my immediate priorities: reversing client attrition, implementing 3 of my previously rejected projects, and rebuilding team morale. You have until tomorrow morning to decide your future with Palmer, I concluded. Choose wisely. As they filed out, Lena caught my eye from the doorway where she'd been watching. Her slight smile was the first genuine support I'd seen all day. That evening, as I prepared for my first full day as CEO, Kennedy appeared in my doorway. They're planning something, she said without preamble. I looked up from my notes. Explain. Declan called an off-site meeting with the others at Terrence's house. They're coordinating their response. I expected as much, I replied. Why are you telling me? Kennedy stepped fully into the office, closing the door behind her. Because I've watched you fight for 3 years while they took credit for others' work and buried problems. I'm tired of it. Yet you told Declan about my meeting with Eleanor. She flinched. Yes, a decision I regret. I studied her, weighing sincerity against potential deception. What exactly did you hear them planning? Mass resignations designed to cripple operations. They believe you'll fail without their institutional knowledge. I nodded slowly. Thank you for the warning. After she left, I called Eleanor. They're planning coordinated resignations. As we anticipated, she replied calmly. Are contingency plans in place? Yes, but there's something else we need to discuss. I hesitated. I found irregularities in the financial records that go beyond poor management. Eleanor's voice sharpened. What kind of irregularities? The kind that might interest federal regulators. The silence stretched between us. How certain are you? She finally asked. Certain enough that I've secured the evidence. Proceed carefully, May, she warned. If what you're suggesting is true, they won't simply resign. They'll fight with everything they have. I'm counting on it, I replied. The next morning, I arrived early to find Lena waiting outside my office. You should see this, she said, handing me her tablet. On the screen was an email chain between Declan and the others, discussing ways to undermine my leadership. The final message from Declan read, meeting in my office at 8:30. United Front. She'll be gone within a week. How did you get this? I asked. Lena's expression was grim. They included me, thinking I'd side with them. They're gathering in Declan's office right now. I checked my watch. 8:27 a.m. Perfect timing, I murmured. As I approached Declan's office, their voices carried through the partially open door. We present our resignations simultaneously, Terrence was saying. The board will have no choice but to reconsider when they realize she can't run operations without us. What about legal implications? Phoebe asked. There's nothing illegal about resigning, Griffin assured her. Besides, we've been careful too. I pushed the door open. 9 heads swiveled toward me. Please, don't let me interrupt, I said pleasantly. You were discussing resignation strategies? Declan recovered first. This is a private meeting. In a company office, on company time, planning coordinated action against company interests? I shook my head. That's not how privacy works, Declan. What do you want? He demanded. I smiled slightly. I came to save you the trouble of writing resignation letters. From my portfolio, I withdrew a stack of documents and placed them on his desk. What are these? Griffin asked, reaching for them. Termination notices, I replied, effective immediately. The room erupted in protests. Papers flew as Terrence knocked the stack sideways. You can't do this, Phoebe gasped, her composure cracking. The board would never approve mass terminations of the entire executive team. They already have, I replied calmly, retrieving the scattered documents. Each termination includes specific performance failures and policy violations. The board reviewed them individually last night. Declan's face reddened. This is absurd. We built this company into what it is today. What it is today, I emphasized, is a company losing market share, hemorrhaging talent, and concealing its decline from stakeholders. Griffin stepped forward, his tall frame looming over me. You think you can walk in here after 3 days as CEO and destroy careers built over decades? I held his gaze. You did that yourselves. I'm merely making it official. Security appeared in the doorway, not the usual building guards, but external specialists hired for this specific purpose. This is Eric and his team, I introduced. They'll escort each of you to collect personal belongings before leaving the premises. Phoebe's laugh held a hysterical edge. You think it's that simple? We built relationships with every major client. They're loyal to us, not Palmer's logo. An interesting theory, I agreed. Let's test it. Call any client right now. Tell them you've been terminated for performance issues and want them to follow you elsewhere. Her confidence faltered. Security will now escort you to your offices. You have 30 minutes to collect personal items. Company devices stay here. As they were led away, Declan remained, watching me with calculated intensity. You won't last a month, he said quietly after the others left. You know operations, but nothing about executive leadership. Perhaps, I conceded. But unlike you, I recognize what I don't know, and I've already hired people who do. His eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Your replacement started yesterday, I informed him. External hires with proven track records, plus several internal promotions of people you consistently overlooked. The truth registered in his eyes. That's why the board moved so quickly. You already had replacements lined up. Eleanor and I have been planning this transition for months. I glanced at my watch. Your 30 minutes starts now. As security led him away, his parting words dripped with venom. This isn't over. He was right. By afternoon, reports came in of executives contacting clients, spreading rumors about company instability. Phoebe had attempted to download client databases before security disabled her access. Griffin had already called 3 industry reporters claiming hostile takeover by an unqualified usurper. I gathered my new leadership team, a mix of external hires and promoted staff who had suffered under the previous regime. They're fighting back exactly as predicted, I informed them. Activating client relationships, spreading misinformation, attempting data theft. Lena, now operations director, looked worried. Benning Industries called asking if we're having financial problems. Declan contacted their CEO directly. Contact each key client personally, I instructed. Share our growth strategy and the performance data they've never seen. Transparency is our advantage now. What about the press calls? Asked Jared, our new communications director. Schedule a media roundtable for tomorrow. We'll address everything directly. As they dispersed, Eleanor called. The board's receiving concerned calls, she reported. How are you handling it? Exactly as planned, I assured her. But there's something we need to discuss in person. That evening, I met Eleanor at her home office, a wood-paneled room filled with mementos from Palmer's early days. You mentioned financial irregularities, she said, dispensing with pleasantries. Show me. I opened my laptop and displayed a series of transactions I'd uncovered. These payments to consultant groups in the Cayman Islands, I explained. They align perfectly with lost contract bids to Westlake Technologies. Eleanor studied the screen, her expression hardening. You're suggesting bid rigging? I'm suggesting the executive team accepted payments to ensure certain contracts went to competitors. I scrolled to another spreadsheet. These shell companies received consulting fees from Palmer while paying personal accounts belonging to Declan, Griffin, and Terrence. Self-dealing, Eleanor murmured. Criminal activity, not just poor management. There's more, I continued. Phoebe approved marketing budgets to agencies that hired her brother's production company at inflated rates. The kickback scheme spans at least 3 years. Eleanor's face had gone pale. Why didn't auditors catch this? The audit partner plays golf with Declan every Sunday. She rose abruptly, pacing the room. The board must be informed immediately. Not yet, I cautioned. If we move too quickly, evidence might disappear. I need time to secure everything properly. How much time? 2 weeks, I replied. They'll be desperate by then, making mistakes. We need to let them believe they still have leverage. As predicted, the counterattack intensified. 3 major clients requested emergency meetings after receiving alarming calls from former executives. Industry blogs published speculation about turmoil at Palmer. My personal history was scrutinized, with anonymous sources questioning my qualifications. Through it all, I maintained a calm public face while working 18-hour days, meeting nervous clients, reassuring employees, and secretly gathering more evidence of the corruption that had rotted Palmer from within. On my 10th day as CEO, Kennedy rushed into my office. They've filed a lawsuit, she announced breathlessly. Wrongful termination. They're demanding reinstatement and damages. I accepted the legal documents with surprising calm. Right on schedule. You expected this? Kennedy looked confused. It's their only play left. I scanned the complaint. They're demanding an emergency hearing tomorrow morning. Our legal team says we need to prepare immediately. I smiled slightly. Tell them not to worry. I'll handle this personally. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I finalized what I'd been building since discovering those first financial discrepancies months ago: a comprehensive map of corruption, self-dealing, and corporate sabotage orchestrated by the very people now suing for wrongful termination. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters the next morning. I arrived early, dressed simply but impeccably, carrying a single expandable folder. Inside, I found all 9 former executives huddled with their attorneys. Declan's smirk when he saw me sent a familiar chill down my spine, the same one I'd felt after each project rejection. "Miss Tanaka," their lead attorney greeted me. "We have a few minutes before the judge arrives. Perhaps we could discuss settlement terms?" "I'm comfortable proceeding to the hearing," I replied. Declan stepped forward. "Don't be stupid, May. You fired an entire executive team simultaneously, without proper cause. No judge will uphold that action." "We'll see." When Judge Wilson entered, the proceedings began with the plaintiff's attorney outlining the case. Distinguished executives with combined experience of over 150 years, summarily terminated by a new CEO with no executive experience, clearly motivated by personal vendetta. When my turn came, I approached the bench with my folder. "Your Honor, rather than make opening remarks, I'd like to submit evidence that renders this case moot." The judge nodded, and I handed over the first document. "This is a federal investigation notice served to Palmer Innovations this morning," I explained. "The SEC and FBI are investigating securities fraud, wire fraud, and racketeering charges against the plaintiffs." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Declan half rose from his seat before his attorney yanked him back down. "The plaintiffs weren't terminated for performance issues, though those existed," I continued. "They were terminated for criminal activity discovered during leadership transition." I proceeded to submit evidence of each executive's participation in various schemes: bid rigging, kickbacks, embezzlement through fake consultancies, and market manipulation. "Your Honor, these terminations weren't just appropriate. They were legally required once this evidence came to light. The company would face liability had we retained executives engaged in criminal activity." The judge reviewed the documents with increasing alarm. "Additionally," I continued, "we've learned the plaintiffs attempted to destroy evidence after termination. Federal agents are executing search warrants at their residences as we speak." The courtroom erupted. Through the chaos, I caught Declan's eye. The hatred there had transformed into something else: fear. Judge Wilson banged his gavel repeatedly until order returned. "This hearing is adjourned," he announced. "Given the pending federal investigation, this civil matter is stayed until criminal proceedings are resolved." Outside, reporters swarmed as the former executives hurried to waiting cars, jackets pulled over their heads. "Miss Tanaka," a reporter called, "did you know about the criminal activity when you became CEO?" I faced the cameras calmly. Palmer Innovations has always stood for integrity and innovation. When those values were compromised, the board took decisive action. We're cooperating fully with authorities and focused on rebuilding our company's legacy. Back at the office, my new executive team waited anxiously. When I entered the conference room, they fell silent. "The lawsuit is effectively dead," I announced, "but we have challenging work ahead rebuilding what they damaged." "The clients?" Lena asked. "We retain them through transparency," I replied. "Share everything, the good and bad, and our plan to improve." Over the following weeks, Palmer transformed. Innovative projects previously shelved were fast-tracked. Talented employees who had been overlooked received recognition and advancement. Clients who had considered leaving renewed contracts after seeing our new direction. 3 months after becoming CEO, I received the final communication I'd been waiting for: formal indictments against all 9 former executives on multiple federal charges. The evidence I'd meticulously gathered over months had proven overwhelming. That evening, I stood alone in my office, watching the sunset paint the city skyline. Eleanor joined me, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "A celebration seems appropriate," she said, offering me one. "For the indictments?" "For the company's recovery." She gestured toward the quarterly report on my desk. First growth quarter in 3 years. Client retention up 18%. Employee satisfaction scores at record highs. I accepted the glass. "That's the real victory. My husband would be proud," Eleanor said quietly. "Not of the revenge, though I admit that was satisfying, but of how you've restored Palmer's soul." "It wasn't revenge," I corrected her gently. "It was justice." "Is there a difference?" I considered this. watching light play across the glass buildings. Revenge would have been simply firing them. Justice was exposing the truth that they now face prison terms while you run their company. Eleanor's eyes twinkled. I smiled at last. Well, perhaps there's a small element of poetic justice. We clinked glasses as my phone buzzed with an incoming message, a news alert showing Declan being led into federal court in handcuffs. 9 times they removed me from projects claiming I didn't fit their culture, I murmured. They never realized they were the ones who didn't fit the culture this company was built on. To culture, Eleanor toasted, and to finally having the right person define it. As I sipped my champagne, I felt not the burning satisfaction of revenge, but something more lasting, the quiet pride of restoration. 9 rejections had led to this moment, not because I'd plotted vengeance, but because I'd refused to abandon what was right. Have you ever stood your ground when everyone said you didn't belong? Have you witnessed corruption hiding behind words like culture and fit? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, subscribe for more narratives about perseverance and justice. Remember, sometimes the path to leadership isn't about fitting in, it's about having the courage to stand out.